Okay, so we'll start with the first slide. Welcome, everybody, to the Alternative Voting Methods League of Women Voters Statewide Task Force. And I am Celeste Landry, the leader of this group. And I appreciate all the help I can get from any of you. Thank you, Beth, right now for setting up the Zoom. Here is our agenda for today. The two biggest items are talking about a study group on proportional representation.
I'm gonna jump in for a minute because I'm puzzled and maybe somebody else can help me. The screen in which your agenda shows up is I can only see part of the agenda, and sometimes I see a little thing at the top, a little tiny menu that lets me adjust that, but it's not working. And I want to grab a copy of the agenda. Maybe you've already sent out the agenda, but
The agenda is in our folder. So if you go to
yeah, okay.
the task
If anybody
force.
has tips on why,
Yeah, it looks normal to me, Neil.
okay,
Huh.
go for it. Sorry.
Okay, so you know where to find it though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to mostly concentrate on the study group on proportional representation and on Initiative 310. And it's a packed agenda, so we might have to rush through a few other things, which is why we started right on time, even though people are still coming in. Here's our state voting methods position. We'll talk about that more in depth later on. We have various meeting norms, and you agreed to behaving yourself when you signed into this meeting. So here's what happened at the last meeting, and anybody who was at the last meeting who has a question, or Neil, who just spoke up, was our presenter on auditing multi-winner proportional ranked voting. Neil is an expert on auditing and election integrity. And we started the discussion about having a study group or a task force on proportional representation. We were hoping a bill would create that, but we were not able to get that added to the elections omnibus bill or any other legislation. Okay, and we'll talk more about citizens initiatives. That's this dueling citizens initiatives bullet point that when we talk about Initiative 310, there are people who are, there are some others that may appear on the ballot, but 310 seems to be the most likely one to appear.
Could you please explain 310?
We will. It's on the agenda.
Okay.
We're going to talk a lot about 310.
Okay.
And I sent out some information about it, but if you didn't get it, it's all on the slides. And I can send it to you separately.
Well, maybe we registered too late to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks to all the staff that we have and volunteers who do so much for the league. Here are some of their names. Often we do meeting introductions right now. So I suggest we go ahead and do that, and I'll stop sharing so we can all see each other. And is there somebody who would like to, is Beth still here? It looks like people are in the waiting room and not able to get in. So I think I'll try to let them in. Deborah Lycan, would you be willing to let to call on people to introduce themselves?
Sure.
That would be great.
Barbara Gaddis.
Hi. I'm not sure what I'm saying. I'm from El Paso County, Colorado Springs, and I just retired from teaching at UCCS.
Great.
Neil Bergstrom.
Yes, I'm Neil Bergstrom. I live in unincorporated Arapahoe County. I'm a retired petroleum engineer.
Tony Larson. You're muted, Tony. Let's see.
We're waiting for Tony. I could mention that Tony was the one who recruited me and my wife to League of Women Voters. We had a program, an alumni program for Colorado College with her.
Oh, cool.
I can introduce Tony if she doesn't introduce herself. She's nodding her head. So Tony's been involved with the league the longest of anybody on this call, I think, except maybe Betsy McBride. And she served as president of the state league, and now she's the liaison between the task forces and the action and advocacy leaders.
Okay. So Neil McBurnett.
Hi, I am someone interested in voting methods since the 1990s at least. I put up the first pages on approval voting on the web when the web was new and everything. And I've been active with the Boulder League. I'm in Boulder since, I don't know, 2017-ish. And I'm also very active in election integrity and auditing.
Thank you. Ann M, it says. Ann?
Yeah, hi. Yes, hi. I'm Ann Marquardt. I'm Ann Marquardt. I'm from Durango, Colorado, and I went to a league presentation this past weekend on a legislative lowdown, and it was really. I've always been interested in ranked choice voting or whatever it's being called this week, and just thought I would chime in here or see what's being done and said thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And sorry, CL Harmer. I'm not sure what your name is.
I go by initials.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
I'm a political activist, Democrat from Denver, and on the board of the Windsor Gardens Democratic Club, but I've been chair of the Democratic Platform Committee, which is where I really became most informed about ranked choice voting, and I'm concerned about theory's ballot.
Okay. Let's see, Britta Singer.
Yeah, I'm Britta Singer. I live in Boulder City, Boulder County. I'm a hugely inactive member of the league, but I am interested in alternative voting methods. So here I am. Thank you.
Mary Caraher.
Hi, Mary Carher. I'm from Loveland and with the Larimer League. And I got really excited with what happened in Alaska the last time around with Mary Portela. And I just, when I saw that this was somewhat like what they were doing in Alaska, that really piqued my interest. So I just really believe in this whole concept and want to learn more about it and become more active with it. Thank you.
Let's see, Jeff Withers.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm a member of the Denver League and don't know much about all the different kinds of voting methods, and so I try to tune into these meetings and learn about them.
Okay.
Hi, Jeff.
I see how.
Jan.
Hi, I'm Jen Cleland. I'm in the Boulder League with Celeste. I co-lead the voting methods team for the Boulder League. I'm also a math professor at CU Boulder, and Barbara, I'm jealous of you for retiring.
Barbara Winnery.
Good, you got my name right.
Did I?
Barb Winnery. I'm the co-director for voter service on the state board. I'm from the Greeley Weld County League, and I'm just always interested in all things elections and voting. So here to learn more about the ballot issues and what's going on with alternative voting methods.
Okay. Pat Venturo.
Hi, I'm Pat Venturo. I'm also from the Boulder League and part of the voting methods team. And it's great to see you all here. We just will keep making forward progress with getting everybody to know more about different voting methods.
Okay, and I have Christina Novelli. No, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you. You unmuted, but there's not much volume.
Good. How about now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I've got my audio fixed. I'm Krista Novelli. I live in Fort Collins. I'm a director of clinical training and development for a mental health care, behavioral health care company. I'm interested and have been for years in ranked choice voting, trying to get more involved in League of Women Voters and various other activities now that my kids are older and out of the house and I have more time on my hands.
Thank you. Who have I missed? Jan Cock? Nancy Bell. Nancy Ball.
Well, I am with the League of Women Voters of the Uncompahgre Valley, which is the western slope. And I'm an election judge, a ballot processor, and I'm very happy with Colorado's election system, but I think ranked choice voting would make it even better.
Uh-huh. Joe Dix, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Joe Dix. I'm a member of the Gunnison County Democrats. I believe ranked choice voting is the way to go. I've spoken with Kathy Semelian, who's our clerk and recorder for Gunnison County. And Kathy's informed me that there have been some initiatives. I'm not that familiar with them at the moment, but I have done a good bit of research on my own as far as ranked choice voting is concerned, and I think it's a good way to go from the federal level all the way down to the city and county level. I realize that it will require, at least I've been informed that it will require some modifications to current voting systems here in Gunnison County, I suppose everywhere else. And I realize that ranked choice voting can take a little bit longer in terms of getting the tallies counted. But I'm an advocate.
Great.
And I'm sorry that I'm so late coming in. I'm also a Medicare counselor, and I was taking a test for recertification for 2024. I thought it was going to be a 10-question test. It was a 50-question test. My goodness.
All right. And I have Cheryl. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So hello, this is the first task force meeting I've attended. I'm a military veteran. I just moved back home to Colorado about a year ago after graduating from law school back east. And I did, while I was there, take the Democracy Initiative seminar that was offered, where we talked about a lot of these things and presented different proposals on a variety of topics. So I'm on my way to a city council meeting, so that's why I have my camera off so I don't make people nauseous. And also I will have to drop off, but I wanted to learn more about the task force and see if there's a role for me. So I just kind of wanted to check in.
Great, thanks. Welcome, Cheryl. And
Cheryl, is your last name Ott?
My last name is Ott.
Okay, great. And Joe, there was a Marion Dix that registered. Are you taking her place?
No,
Okay.
I am he. I am he. My name is Marion Joseph Dix.
Got it. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
And I think my last person is Frank Atwood.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Frank Atwood with both Approval Voting Party and supportive as best I can of Celeste.
Yeah. Anybody I missed?
You didn't introduce yourself.
Yes,
Barbara
sorry.
Gaddis has Becky Langley with her. And I don't think we got Barbara Kelly, did we?
No, you didn't. Let me introduce myself. I'm Barbara Kelly. I live in Broomfield. Every explanation I've read of any alternative voting method has been thoroughly confusing. I can't follow it. I'm here hoping to learn. I think unless we dumb things down in the crudest sense to a third grade level for people to understand, we are in for a self-defeating defeat. Self-defeating defeat.
And I guess I'm last. I'm Deborah Lycan, and I'm from La Plata County, Durango. And I've been attending these meetings for a while, trying to educate myself. And I'm also working on the study guide for reform of primary elections that we've been working on in this group.
Thank you.
I don't think Betsy McBride introduced herself, and we're still Becky Langley. If you want to say hi, you're on Barbara Gaddis's screen. And L. Olace is another person.
Okay, I'm missing those. Betsy, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I'm Betsy McBride calling from Boise, Idaho. And it looks like our open primary ranked choice voting initiative will be on the ballot.
Oh. Wow.
And it's much like the one that 310, much like 310s. We have people still entering.
Yeah, that's a big group, 23 now.
I can introduce myself. This is Laura Olais from Durango. Olais is my last name.
How do you spell Laura? Laura or Lora?
Yes. And I just joined the League of Women Voters a few months ago, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm very concerned about the voting. So I'm on two of the groups with voting, just helping out with some things to learn. And then I'm also on the healthcare group. So I'm very interested in learning what I can.
Okay. Becky Langley, do you want to wave or say anything? And then maybe Mark Bonehurst. Hi, Becky. Okay. Mark, you want to say hi?
Oh, hi. I'm just visiting from Minneapolis, League of Women Voters, Minneapolis. Interested in the topic. I'm not being from part of the Colorado League. I'm just going to listen.
Thank you. And Gaithia.
Hi, I'm Gaithia Weiss in Longmont, and occasionally manage to make it to these meetings. I'm very interested in election security and alternative voting methods, and work on that with the Boulder League groups.
And I actually Jan Koch was called on, but Jen responded. So Jan, if you can hear us now, do you want to introduce yourself? Jan is from Fort Collins and was one of the founders of the Center for Election Science, which advocates primarily for approval voting.
Yeah.
So I just...
That'll work. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay. I think that's pretty much everybody. Did we miss anybody? Welcome to all league members and non-league members. We're going to have, I hope, a good discussion. I'm going to go ahead and go back to sharing my screen. And we just did introductions. So here are some events that I want everybody to know about, or you might. So tomorrow is Election Day in Eugene, Oregon, and star voting is on the ballot, whether or not to adopt it. For star voting, you give a score of 0 to 5 for every candidate. If you don't score a candidate, they get a 0. The two highest sums of scores advance those two candidates, and then they look at the ballots and see, like instant runoff voting, they see who is higher ranked on those ballots, and whoever is highest ranked on the top two summation of scores. I may not be saying this the best way. That person prevails. So it's a very expressive voting method. And it doesn't have as much publicity as any of the RCV voting methods, but it's I would love to see it adopted somewhere so we can have some on the ground knowledge of how it works in real life. So on Tuesday, there's going to be Nick Troiano's talking about his book The Primary Solution at the Tattered Cover.
You mean Wednesday?
What did I say? On Wednesday, yes, the May 22nd. And I'm going to go to that. Maybe I'll see some of you there. Then every month almost, except for 2 months in the summer, there's Fair Vote Canada holds a PR 101 webinar. So that's everybody's welcome to go to that. Tuesday, June 25th is primary election day. The national convention is held in Washington, D.C. in presidential election years. And that will be June 27th to the 30th. And we actually, our state league applied to hold a workshop on mandatory voting and the affirmative right to vote, which does not exist in our constitution right now, but does in some other, in several other countries. And that workshop application was rejected, I'm sorry to say. We may try again another time. The national presidential conventions are in July and August. Okay. The next meeting date we'll probably have on June 17th at 5:30 on Zoom. We'll probably end up just following up on the meeting topics here. I'd really like to, at some point, talk about what a contingent election is and how the U.S. House could pick the winner, but I don't know if we'll be able to do it. July 24th, we're talking about having the meeting on the fourth Monday, and maybe not having an August meeting. Often we take off once in the summer. I know my schedule's very busy. If there's a clamor for having an August meeting, we could hold it, but and we may have plenty to talk about, but somebody else may have to run the meeting. So, okay, here's our agenda for today. We'll start with following up on a topic from last time, a study group on proportional representation. So first of all, what is proportional representation? It means that you take the voters' preferences and however you divide them, usually it's by political party, but it could be by an oil and gas issue. It could be by, people want to vote for the women or people want to vote for the men. It could be racial. It could be many different ways. And if you have a proportional result, the elected body, it has to be a body, or you can't have proportionality for one seat, like a governor. That's never going to be proportional. The results should reflect the voters' preferences. So you get better representation with proportional representation, and none of the seats are not winner take all. Right now, most elections are winner take all. They're single seat. Like all of our seats for the US House are single seat, winner take all. And we may have proportional representation overall because Colorado may elect half Democrats and half Republicans, which is, we're kind of a swing state, maybe a little more Democratic. So maybe 5 Democrats, 3 Republicans. I mean, that would be proportional. But you don't necessarily guarantee that. And especially with gerrymandering and safe seats, it's really hard. And it's better if, like, somebody in Denver can elect a Republican in Denver can elect a Republican, and a Democrat in Colorado Springs can elect a Democrat. So you would be voting for more than just one person under a proportional representation system. So why do we need to have a Colorado study group? Because the county clerks won't run an election unless the Secretary of State has set up the rules for it. I'm going to zoom through these slides a little bit fast because I want to get to Initiative 310, and we did a lot of these slides in the last meeting. there are right now 3 methods authorized by statute: plurality voting, single and multi-winner, instant runoff voting, and then the proportional RCV form, which is called single transferable vote. We call it STV. And those are authorized by statute. We could ask to get more authorized by statute. There haven't been any more authorized by statute since about 2008. But even though they're authorized by statute, that doesn't mean that we can conduct an election. So single transferable vote, we don't have the rules to conduct that election. And Superior, the town of Superior, asked the Boulder County clerk about running an STV election. And the county clerk said, sorry, we're not doing that. They don't have the rules. They don't have to do it. There's no requirement. There is now, since 2021, a requirement for county clerks to run an instant runoff voting form of RCV election. So Boulder ran an election last year for mayor using instant runoff voting, but nothing yet for any proportional methods. Colorado's been a leader in a lot of election topics, and we could also lead on adopting proportional representation. It's just a question of political will, and it always needs to be studied first. It's not going to happen without figuring out the steps to make it happen. And we tried to get a bill passed. I've talked to Secretary of State about creating a working group like they did for risk limiting audits. And we're just meeting resistance. So one option is for us to just move ahead and create our own study group. And we reached out to Lee Drutman, who wrote Breaking the Two-Party Doom Loop and is a big fan of proportional representation. And via him, we've heard from the Pro Rep Coalition. They are putting together a working group for organizations that are championing PR at the state level. And I think it would be great if we found out more about the group and considered joining the working group. Is there anybody who would like to meet with the executive director and report back next month to our task force? I'm planning on doing it, so you don't have to carry the meeting all by yourself. You can just listen in if you want.
Celeste, I would definitely like to join you for that meeting, but I think I'm not going to be at this meeting next month.
Okay, I mean, I can report back too, but okay. Is there anybody else? We don't have to have just 2 people. I work
would
with
love to join. Thank you.
Okay.
What day are you meeting?
We don't know, but we'll coordinate schedules.
Okay.
Barb, you've got the whole Weld County Commissioners.
Yes, I know.
PR issue.
Yeah, put me down. I don't know. I have surgery coming up, so I might not be able to do it, but
okay. We'll keep you in the loop.
Celeste, are you voting? Are you meeting in person or
no? No.
Okay.
This is a group that wants to get lots of groups together that are all champion proportional representation at the state level, different state levels, not just like it seems to be mostly a California group, but they're working across lots of different states. So I don't know how far along they are in forming, but yeah.
So would it be appropriate for Idaho to attend?
Let's do it. I mean, all they can say, we want a separate meeting with you, or no, you're not welcome. How could they say no, you're not welcome?
Well, if they're looking for more groups, they might as well include more the merrier.
I don't know if Minnesota wants to be involved, Mark, or what, but
yeah, I mean, I don't have any groundwork laid here for that, so probably not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So great. We've got 5 people here, and we'll report back, and you can always get involved later.
Yeah.
If you didn't already speak up. Okay. So in terms of a Colorado study group, if we're doing the work to make this happen because the Secretary of State and the legislature aren't willing to do it, we have to figure out who should be in the group. We need to invite either a limited number of people or invite everyone who wants to be part of the conversation, and then, solidify who's actually in the group. Do we ask people to apply to be in the group? How do we make sure our group is considered legitimate and has clout? Maybe it depends on which members we can get to be part of the group. So does anybody have comments about this? I've created a long list of people we might want to consider talking to about this.
I think answering any of these questions, I think, would be informed by a clear statement of what the group is trying to accomplish.
Okay, sorry, we don't have that slide, but what the group is trying to accomplish is how could we adopt and implement proportional representation in Colorado? And would we only consider the one that is in statute right now, or would we consider a different proportional voting method? There was a study done in 2007, which included a little bit of proportional representation. And some of the names that I have listed on the upcoming slides, those people were in the 2007 group. So, Barb.
Would it be appropriate to have clerk and recorder or an election official?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I don't know how much time we want to spend on this, but I mean, maybe if some people are particularly interested, we could form a subgroup that works just on this.
Yeah, I think we should create like a steering committee or something like that. And maybe there's subgroups and that may at least make a list of people we should have representative. I think from different counties or municipalities or,
Yeah. I'd be happy to partner with other groups. So it's not just the League of Women Voters doing this. I mean, I think that might help with legitimacy and clout. But is there anybody here on this call that's interested in being on this steering? Maybe people who've worked with campaigns a lot, who know how to we need some politicians on this probably, because they're going to have to write the enabling legislation. But also, as you said, election administrators. So maybe I'll ask this question at the end, but think about if you want to be part of the steering committee for this group. So here are possible state Senate representatives. You can see not all these people are necessarily going to be in the legislature next year, but they've all somehow been involved with voting bills or more representation of different groups. So BEAC at the bottom stands for Bipartisan Election Advisory Committee. So if there are some of these people if there's a senator that you think needs to be on here, or there's a senator who you think would not work well with the group, speak up. And
I would add former Senator Ron Tupa and former, I don't know, Senator or Representative Jonathan Singer, who both understand the issues pretty well and have connections and might be really helpful.
Good. Okay, I'm going to add Jonathan Singer to the representative list. Is there anybody else, a senator, people think should be part of this? Here are House representatives. Chris DeGree Kennedy sponsored the enabling legislation for instant runoff voting. And we asked him to include STV, single transferable vote, but he said that's too hard. Some of these people are running for Senate. A number of these people have either carried election bills or worked on or spoken up when election bills came around. And Steve Woodrow is actually also a member of the Bipartisan Election Advisory Committee, as is Neil McBurnett, who's on this call. Anybody else you can think of or that should be added to the list, or anybody that should be taken off of this list for any reason? And if you don't want to say it right now, you can always tell me why later.
I don't know about, I mean, Jennifer Parenti is very knowledgeable about redistricting. I don't know where and how she's involved with alternative votings.
I've talked to her a little bit about it, and she's positive that you can do a risk limiting audit of single transferable vote, but it's not mathematically possible.
Okay.
So, but yes, I'll add her to the list, sure. Okay. So elected officials, here's a number of people who seem to have interest, a number from Broomfield.
While people are looking at the list, I'll just make a minor tweak to what you just said. We don't know of an efficient way to do a risk limiting audit of STV. You can always count all the ballots, but that's not
true. That wasn't what Jennifer Parenti meant, though.
I am quite, I think you're right.
Okay, any other elected officials, like maybe somebody I know, like there's a Denver person who is not a fan of instant runoff voting and quite vocal. I mean, we could include that person on here.
The only thing I would say is these seem to be all Front Range people. I think it depends upon what perspective, but it wouldn't hurt to get Western Slope people or people from different areas.
So Mark Catlin is from the Western Slope.
Okay.
I think Rick Taggart might be from the Western Slope. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure where these all are either. So
yeah, but you're right. We do want good representation.
You said that Woodrow was on BEAC, but you have written Taggart. Are they both on it?
Yes, one's a Republican representative, one's a Democratic representative. It sounds like you didn't know that, so maybe they haven't shown up very much.
I think that's true.
Okay.
Likely, but I've only been to 2 meetings, so.
Okay. And Tony Larson was the league representative on BEAC before Neil McBurnett, just FYI, everybody. Okay.
Contact info.
I think Cheryl needs to be muted.
Celeste?
Yeah.
Neil mentioned another name besides Singer, and I'm not sure that you wrote it down. It's like Tupert or something?
Ron Tupa. He's actually running for Congress right now as a independent. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure you wrote it down.
He'll run against Brittany Pedersen in the 7th. Is that right? The 7th congressional district, I think. Okay. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to do. I'm trying to. Okay. Okay. So let's go on to, yeah.
Celeste, Mary Caraher has her hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we are speaking, I'm texting John Kafalas because he might be really excited about this. He's been interested for a really long time, and he's on your list right here.
Yes, he was one of the sponsors of the bill that put into statute instant runoff voting and single transferable vote. And he was on the voter choice task force. Yes, he's been interested for a long time. Yes. I have a picture of myself with him. I said, can I take my picture with you?
All right.
Okay, well, thank you for texting him. I look forward to hearing, find out. Okay. And then possible experts or interest groups that we may want to include. Some of these people were on the voter choice task force, as you can see. I don't know Natalie Menton, but she seems pretty involved. And also RTD is considering changing the way their elections happen. So she might want to be involved in this again. Ken Theory's name is on here. I doubt that he would actually be in the study group, but he might send a representative. And then the two names at the bottom, or the two lines at the bottom, Linda Good and Candace Stutzriam and Mark Chilton, they have been opposed to the Kent Theory initiatives and have proposed, Linda Good and Candace Stutzriam have proposed their own initiatives, which could get on the ballot. It's quite a big lift collecting all those signatures, so I am not holding my breath that they will get on the ballot. But this is a good place to include like random names of people who should be involved. So I've got these possible names, but we can add more.
I can suggest Gary Swing.
Oh yeah, Gary Swing, good.
I think he's really an expert on proportional representation.
He studied poli-sci in college. I've ran into him the other day. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I've got that one written down. And then we might want some lawyers. So Scott Gessler has been arguing all of these lawyers have been at the title board meetings on the initiatives about changing the way we elect our officials. So three of them, the bottom three, are considered Democratic leaning lawyers, and Scott Gessler was a Republican Secretary of State. So if you can think of other people, doesn't hurt to have more names.
Celeste is Jesse Kuhlman, I would think, would want to be part of a proportional representation.
Okay, I'm putting, yes, I think you're right, because he has a Best Democracy website. So I'll add him to this list here on possible experts. Okay, election lawyers, possible election administrators. We have a long list here, starting with Dwight Shellman, who is the one who has to make all this happen from the Secretary of State's office. And you can read all the names and tell me if there's anybody that needs to be added. Gil Ortiz lost his most recent re-election bid in Pueblo County. There may be some controversy around him, so we might want to do a little investigating before we if there's an integrity issue or something, we may not want that person on the study group. So anybody else?
I also thought of another proportional representation, possibly an expert, and that would be Jesus. Hamlin, the former
Hamlin. Okay, he's out of state. Let's put him in the next slide after this one. So there are various organizations that we should make sure we think about at least. I don't know if we want them all in here. I don't have like disability rights groups here. NAACP is here because they've been involved in election litigation, and there is a racial component to the Voting Rights Act. So they seem like they would be an important group to involve. The Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, is a member of the Bipartisan Election Advisory Committee. I'm not sure that they need to be in this group, but maybe they do something that I don't know about. They work on special districts. So maybe, but I don't know how much we want to focus on special districts.
It would be great if special districts would do proportional representation, but that seems like the furthest reach of anything I've heard today.
Yeah, I think we want county
to fix there first.
We want county clerks to know how to do it, and then we can move it over. Political parties will want to be involved, so So maybe we should give them a seat at the table too. It's not something the league typically does necessarily, but are there any other organizations people can think of that should be involved here? I feel like we need a campaign manager to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah.
And then some out-of-state people. Here are some out-of-state people. Deb McDonough does spell her name with a little D, so I did too. Ruth Greenwood has spoken at National League conventions. Robert Winters has an amazing website on STV and how it's been used in Cambridge since 1941. And I will add Aaron Hamlin to this list.
May I interrupt just for a moment?
Yeah.
It seems apropos, you mentioned just a minute ago about any other organizations that ought to be involved. I think a note that I sent, and Celeste, I think you may have been the person who answered it, about preparing a presentation and deputizing people to present that presentation to various community and civic groups on what the path forward is or the way to proceed is. It just conceptually is that kind of a thing that that this organization, I commend you all on being involved and informed. I certainly am not anywhere near what you folks are, but is there something that we could look to in the future to sort of present the findings of the group? Thank you.
If you're just talking about like what happens at our meetings, that's on the State League website on the task force page for alternative voting methods. If you want a presentation to a community group on, say, single winner voting methods or proportional representation, this group hasn't done that so much, but the Boulder County League is very willing to give presentations. Like I spoke to the Idaho group. So it doesn't even have to be in state, but typically we would work in state. There are groups that do national work too. So lwvbc.org is the Boulder County League if you want a presentation. Probably
okay.
That's better.
Oh,
and
thank
then
you.
And then go to Teams at Work and then voting methods on the menu. So,
on the Boulder County. Okay,
yeah.
I think the thing I'm thinking about is in the future, if there is a distillation of what the view is and recommendations on how to proceed, it seems that across the state, it would be a good opportunity locally if we had one common presentation that is the same story for everybody. And those local groups or two-person teams present that sort of thing. But I'll leave it at that, and I'll look at the Boulder County webpage. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that it's a good idea to have kind of a latest version of the presentation. The thing is, the presentation changes because the rules change, or one jurisdiction adopts a voting method, or an election in Alaska is held, and so we have more data. So we would want to work on off the latest presentation, but it would be good to have maybe, I mean, I don't know, other people might have other opinions, but I think it might be good to have like, this is the league presentation at the moment.
And I just realized that probably the local League of Women Voters for Gunnison County might be the organization that has either itself or within it some folks who did that. So thank you for hearing my question.
Sure. And I think this might be the last one. Yeah. So is there anybody who says, wow, that steering committee, that's what I want to work on. And I'm good at organizing groups and setting up task forces and things like that. Tony, maybe I should volunteer you for this. You're probably smiling right
not,
now.
Not at the moment.
Oh, you found your unmute button.
Yeah. Way to go, Tony.
Barb, what's up?
I was going to mention we're back on the organizations. I'm sensing that we need some diversity. I don't know on these other people you've been listing, but how about something like Me Familia Vota? I think we have.
I'm adding that. Good idea. Yes.
And I'd also NCAA. Is that the right thing, or I'm into the sports world? I don't know. Oh, yeah,
NAACP. So
yeah.
Me Familia Vota. I know that there's some local groups, like a group called CIRC, Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, so I can add that too. And they may say, we'll let Mi Familia Vota take care of it because they're more into voting than immigrant rights or whatever.
Sure, but I'm just thinking at least a voice, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they come up in another piece of this where we meet with all the stakeholders. But I think it's a good thing to get some diversity and BIPOC representation involved.
So for those of you who don't know, Barb Winery was successful in a lawsuit against Weld County because Weld County decided they didn't need to follow the state law on how to draw their commission districts. And another plaintiff in that lawsuit was the Latino group of
the Weld County Latino Coalition.
Yeah. So.
And we won the first stage. It's now in the Colorado Court of Appeals.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, that happened at the end of April, beginning of May, and we've cross-filed, so we're waiting on the next step. But we've been successful. Well, the one thing is that they asked the judge to reconsider his decision, and the judge, in so many words, said, "You use the same arguments you used the first time." And I said, "No, the first time." I'm saying no now. So anyway, yes, we're struggling with this situation, and I know that this part might be a good alternative if we can't get some resolution on this point, but we're trying to get them to follow,
the problem, everybody, is how they draw the district lines. So I've talked to Barb about one solution is don't draw any district lines and use proportional representation. You could elect 3 county commissioners this year and 2 next year, and you could use a proportional voting method, and then Latinos would get their fair share of representation, and et cetera, et cetera. So, okay.
So last, I wanted to throw out 2 more ideas. One is somebody from Portland, which is a big place that succeeded.
Good idea.
With, proportional representation recently. And another is the guy or someone from the California group who has spoken with some of us in Colorado before.
California for Election Reform. His name is Steve Chesson, something like that. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Okay.
So Celeste, are you at risk of building an echo chamber? Good stakeholder involvement. Would you include some people that are at least on the fence so that you have a sense of what the opposition might say or where the confusions come?
I think absolutely we need to do that. And also, one of the things that I see happening is people think they understand what proportional representation is, and they don't. And so some of the elected officials, legislators who are listed here have spoken about proportional representation and not correctly, and so not accurately. And so educating them is important, I think. But yeah, I think that's why people like Linda Good and Candace Stutzrium are here. Like, they're very opposed to the Kent Theory initiatives, and they've thought a lot about this. And so, yeah, I think we want a variety of people. We may end up with a dissenting opinion from the task group, but
that'd be okay. That'd be all right to have a minority report.
There was a minority report that Ron Forthover submitted as part of the voter choice task force. So, and Jan Koch is on this call, by the way.
Yeah, I would just emphasize also that it's not like an outcome, a preordained goal or outcome is that suddenly we adopt this for everything that happens in Colorado. A huge part of this is simply to make it possible for a local jurisdiction who wants to do this to do it exactly like we saw in Superior. So, you know, it's not like this is a threat to people who don't want it, unless they're, you know, against the stream of their own community.
So speaking about that, this Kemp Theory Initiative, or Initiative 310, is would be imposed upon everybody if it passes. So that's why we need to talk about it. The league needs to educate people about this Alaska model. And we should also figure out what we think about it. Whoops, I didn't want that. Sorry. Here is the actual initiative language.
And am I right that this is always referred to here as top four rather than final four?
I don't remember right now. I thought it was final four, but yeah, you might be right. I think it's final four. So there are two main parts. There's the primary where you choose one candidate, and then four of those candidates that all run against each other no matter what party. And you can vote for them no matter what party you belong to or don't belong to. The top four vote getters move on to the general. And in the general, you use instant runoff ranked choice voting.
So Celeste, is the fact that it uses IRV somewhere else, because that text you just showed just said adopting a process for how the ranked votes are tallied. Is it specified somewhere else that that process is
yes.
IRV?
This is not actually the initiative language. This is the ballot title. So okay. I should change this slide. Yeah, it says in the actual initiative language, it says instant runoff voting. It is a statutory change, which is good, because if there's something that goes wrong with it, then the legislature will be very motivated and can fix it. So there were about 70 initiatives that were filed, and some of them are constitutional, some of them were statutory. Right now, number 310 is actually in the Supreme Court. We don't know what's going to happen. But the coalition behind it is very optimistic that it's going to be fine. The State League often supports or opposes initiatives. We've done that with multiple ones already for the fall ballot, and we may want to do this for number 310. We're also in the process of a primary election reform study, but we haven't had, the study report is not fully written. The consensus questions haven't happened yet. So how do we decide if we're going to support or oppose this? Do we have enough information to do so? Is it the cart before the horse? I'm glad Tony's on the call so she can tell us exactly what we're supposed to be doing at this meeting. But these are things that I emailed out to you, and the impact on primaries would be as written here. It basically would change from a semi-open partisan primary with plurality voting, determining a party's single nominee, to an all-candidate primary. Everybody votes in it all the candidates run in it. You get to vote for one, and the top 4 advance to the general.
So this is not proportional, right?
No, not at all. It's all
This is just a
single.
single winner. Yeah, okay.
It's almost every partisan seat that is above the county level.
So this is like the jungle primary of California.
Except it's top 4 instead of top 2. In California, the top 2 move on.
Okay.
But Alaska advances the top 4.
Have you had any conversations with political science professor Seth Maskett at DU, who has studied elections?
I read his book, but
Right.
no, I haven't talked to him. He did testify at a hearing that I was at. Has anybody else here
What's the name?
Seth Maskett? Masket, maybe? Is that right?
Masket.
Yeah. Have you talked to him?
I've heard him speak, and I've read his book and some of his other. I mean, he really speaks to why parties are beacons for the rest of the population that are not engaged in politics the way some of us may be. And
Yeah.
I'm terribly concerned about Kent theories. I think we'll all be subject to very expensive advertising and no vetting of local candidates. I think it's a terrible idea, but.
And another thing about this is that it doesn't get rid of the party labels. The party labels would still be on there. It's called a nonpartisan blanket primary, but that's because the parties don't run it. The parties don't get to say who advances. It's only, you still have a label on there, a party label on there.
Well, you're not vetting candidates through the parties.
Correct.
You're vetting it through wealthy gazillionaires like Kent Theory, and who can get anything on the ballot because they've got the money to pay for ballot signatures.
Money has a lot of influence in politics, absolutely.
Well, but this really throws it toward the moneyed interest, doesn't it? I mean, I'd be interested in having a Maskett kind of speak to that.
Why don't we see if he can come to maybe our next meeting?
That'd be good. We could.
Yeah. I'm happy to reach out to him. If somebody here knows him, that would be better. But, I can reach out to him as a league member and running this group here. So, okay. So this is the primary situation. And then next we have the general. And right now it's choose one for the general, and whoever gets the most votes wins. This would change it to instant runoff ranked voting. So you could rank the candidates and you go through the tallying process, and then somebody ends up floating to the top. And if somebody gets a majority on the first round of counting, then you don't have to do any elimination. You're just done. And this is going to require a lot of work from the Secretary of State to make this happen. We are not prepared to do audits across county lines, risk limiting audits at least. The city of Boulder did they just changed the rule. It was supposed to be by January 1st, 2025, and they changed it to 2026 in Senate Bill 210.
Hey, Celeste.
This is what I want here. Okay.
Celeste, is there a fiscal note on this yet?
The bill passed. Yes, there's a fiscal note, but it's one of these election omnibus bills. So I don't know. We might not be able to see how much is related to this versus the other things. So some impacts on this, as CL said, the primary elections will no longer be the vehicle for choosing a party's nominee. They will only winnow the field to 4 candidates for the general. It could be all Republicans in some places. If there are not 4 candidates, if there are only 4 candidates running or fewer than 4, this initiative, if it matches what the previous initiative said, there've been so many initiatives, it's hard to keep them all straight. You would still hold the election and you would still count the votes, but everybody would proceed to the general election. And I think a lot of times you wouldn't have 4 people running for a seat. So you'd be holding a lot of elections. Anyway. So everybody would run in the June primary. So that means minor parties and unaffiliated candidates would have to get their act in order to run in June. It also means 17-year-olds who will be 18 in November won't get a chance to see candidates from every party probably when they vote in November. A very important thing I'd like everybody to pay attention to, because it's all about voting methods, is the last big bullet point here. Advancing 4 candidates like they do in Alaska rather than 2 like they do in California. Advancing 4 candidates to the general decreases the impact of vote splitting. So for instance, California is a very blue Democratic state. They just had a US Senate election primary. There were 3 Democrats running and 1 Republican, and the 3 Democrats split the vote. They had way more than a majority. The Republican had like 30-something%. And there was also a little bit of sneaky work on a Democrat. Adam Schiff basically did a lot of advertising for the Republican, hoping that it would be the Adam Schiff and the Republican Steve Garvey on the ballot, and that's what happened. But now it means that the general election is already basically predetermined. We can pretty much guarantee Adam Schiff is going to win, whereas it would have been much more interesting if 2 Democrats had made it to the final ballot. So if you were advancing 4 candidates, you would have 2 Democrats probably. So
I think it incentivizes that kind of strategy.
Top 2 does for sure. Top 4 less so, but still some. I mean, yeah, every voting method has some strategy. I'd like to make a few comments here about the instant runoff voting part of it. And this is what a lot of people hear about, and you may not get the whole story. So instant runoff voting is the term that the league likes to use instead of RCV, because RCV can mean instant runoff voting. It can mean single transferable vote. It can mean the bottoms up RCV form that Seattle is adopting. It can mean the terrible version that Utah uses that's not very democratic. So there, on the Alternative Voting Methods Task Force webpage, there's a link to an article called "What is RCV Anyway?" It's been reviewed by a political scientist, and so I think I think you should go look at that if you have questions about what is RCV anyway. That's the first comment about IRV. The second comment is, don't believe people when they say that the winner gets a majority. And I'm very happy to say that the word majority does not appear in the ballot title. And we pushed really hard to make sure the league submitted testimony saying, do not say that the winner gets a majority of the votes, because that's not true. And there's some examples here when people did not win with a majority. Any questions on the instant runoff voting or these impacts?
Yeah, stay there for a second. I just want to emphasize that sometimes a candidate who would actually beat all the other candidates head to head, as demonstrated by the votes, the ballots cast, might not even win might not even make it to the final round. So majority fails not only for the reason that Celeste gave, but also because the way the elimination is done, sometimes, as in we saw in Alaska, the candidate who would have beaten all the other candidates, if you just look at preferences of voters' ballots one by one, didn't even make it to the final round. So that's another problem with majority.
And we need to make sure people know that, because instant runoff voting is a better voting method than plurality. And we don't want people to be surprised when the results are different from what they were told. And even in a little thing, like in the city of Boulder, when we had our instant runoff voting election, we thought that they would do sequential elimination. They'd eliminate one, and then they'd check all the votes, and then they'd eliminate the next one. Instead, because the two lowest vote getters had no possible way of competing against the next higher candidate, they eliminated both of them at once. So you couldn't see how the votes transferred. So like that was a bit of a shock. That was the biggest comment we heard, probably, except for maybe some negative campaigning, in Boulder. So it's really important, I think, to give people all the information. And what Neil was talking about is called a center squeeze, where the centrist candidate is squeezed out by the people on the extremes. It doesn't always have to be political center. It can be other kinds of center. But anyway, anybody else have questions about this?
Well, I'll rant a little bit. Yeah, what Neil said. It's not just Alaska. It's Burlington, Vermont, and I've heard maybe Utah. I haven't read that in detail, but I just saw mention that.
So I have a comment about that. There is an academic paper on this that has analyzed all of the IRV elections that have taken place anywhere in the US. And the only examples of the center squeeze that they found were Burlington and Alaska.
Oh, can you put the name of that study in the chat, or the
Yeah, let me see if I can find that paper and drop it in, but it's on the archive somewhere.
Great.
So an interesting thing about IRV is that it hasn't been used that much, right? And you'll hear statistics about how wonderful it works, but what you really want to know are, how does it work in a competitive contest, not in one where it's an incumbent running against a non-viable candidate, or two non-viable would be two non-viable candidates. We want to know like how it works when stressed. So
amen.
So yeah, so these are all things that if this gets on the ballot, the league will need to be out there educating people about. Marcia, you have your hand up, and then also Tony, let us know if I have forgotten anything after Marcia and Deborah talk.
What was the version used in the mayoral election in New York City? This is the second one you've listed here?
It was instant runoff voting. All of these listed here were instant runoff voting.
I think it's turned out to be a terrible process for New York.
Well, one of the really bad things about the New York one was that there were a large number of candidates running, but voters were only allowed to rank their top three. So that meant five. Okay, but still many fewer than the number of candidates. So by the time it got to the final rounds, many voters' ballots were exhausted because they weren't allowed to rank all the candidates. And that's a choice in election design. And there's also evidence that truncated ballots can have a significant impact on who wins.
And the head of the national organization that advocates most for instant runoff voting actually wrote a guest opinion in the New York Times telling people how to strategically vote. Like, make sure you put 4 of the top 5 most likely to win candidates. You rank them, and you for number 1 you can rank whoever you want, but for the other 4, if you want your vote to count in the last round, make sure you rank 4 of the top 5. So yeah. So did we answer your question, Marcia? And then Deborah?
I guess my small comment is I hear this group wanting to be opposed to this, and I'm just wanting to make a comment that it still isn't it an improvement over our plurality semi-open partisan primaries. And it's also the only kind of alternative voting most voters have ever heard of. And if you come out as the League of Women Voters opposed to this reform, I think you have some explaining to do, which it might not be bad. It concerns me the uplift to oppose this and to get some other people educated about some other alternative.
I think it may sound like we like, without having come out in support or in opposition to this, I think we often sound like we are opposed to it because we are trying to give the complete story. We are not the campaign messenger for RCV or IRV. We are a source of information for telling voters the whole story. And for instance, the Boulder County League includes members from Broomfield. Broomfield doesn't have its own League of Women Voters. So we wrote a fact sheet about instant runoff voting, the pluses and the minuses, and we got some pushback, people saying, it sounds like you're opposed to it. But at the very end, we said, does the League of Women Voters support this? And we said, in the fact sheet, it said something like, the League of Women Voters supports alternatives to plurality voting, and this is an alternative. This is a better alternative than plurality voting. We didn't actually say we support this ballot measure. The state league later did support the ballot measure. So we are on record as having supported instant runoff voting. This is a little different because it includes a partisan primary and then a general with instant runoff voting. I don't know if that answers your question very much, but
I think that there's a lot more to discuss before we even talk about whether we're for it or against it. But it's an important point, and I agree. There's a lot of good here, and there's some confusing parts. So, thank you.
So I don't. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Here is the national position, and some of these things are highlighted here, or not highlighted. They're in larger font, and all of these 5 bullet points that are in larger font have problems with partisan primaries. The league looks at the entire electorate, but a partisan primary is limited to a subset of the electorate. And so you don't allow everybody to weigh in. You have a lot of wasted votes. In Boulder County, if you're a Republican, your vote's never going to count for there are actually a couple of Republican primaries in Boulder County, but it doesn't really matter because probably the Democrat is going to win in the general election. So you're just basically wasting your vote. And so partisan primaries do have problems. Here are some of them listed. And the primary election reform study will go into more detail on this. So the initiative 310 would change to an all candidate primary, which is probably appealing to the League of Women Voters, not necessarily to parties, although parties may think it's a good idea too, as long as there isn't too much vote splitting. The thing I want to say here is that all candidate primaries are more likely to result in a competitive election in the general election. Even for a safe seat, you may still have two candidates from the same party running for that seat. You could argue that in Alaska, where they did this in 2022 for the special election, the Republicans split the vote, and there was a little bit of character voting based on character. I mean, people didn't like Sarah Palin, so they might have wanted a Republican, but it was either going to be Nick Begich or no Republican. So they would leave the rankings blank after the top ranking, for instance. The thing I like is more choice, but we don't want to have more choice unless we also have a better voting method. So that's one thing that the Initiative 310 does. It would allow you to have lots of candidates run and have a way to express yourself in the elections better. So for instance, so this is a point against it that I've heard at the title board. The minor parties are on the general election ballot automatically, but that would go away under 310. They would have to run in the primary in June. And a problem with that is that general elections usually have a higher turnout than primary elections. The league strongly supports higher turnout. So how do we balance wanting higher turnout and wanting more voice and maybe letting minor parties have a say also? So anybody else want to speak up on this? Go for it.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, you could have two Democrats and two Republicans come out top, and then that just totally shuts out all minor parties. So this proposal sounds like it may be death to minor parties.
I guess the other thing that I would note, I mean, I don't know what to think about this yet, but I think minor parties would be more highly incented to, they're often kind of more engaged and might end up having a better turnout in a primary than they would in the general. So I'm really curious what political scientists and others think would be the case, but this might be in some sense to their benefit in terms of getting exposure in a more clear way in the general.
For what it's worth, the Alaska special election from 2022 gets all of the press because of the Condorcet failure. But in the general election, the top four did include a member of the Libertarian Party.
The second time around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm a retired, shall I say, political scientist. I have a graduate degree in political science, and I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with these ideas, but I'm still trying to figure out why we are looking for alternative voting methods. And it seems to me that the fundamental point is to get more people interested in participating. And all of this is very interesting academically, but until we get money out of the elections, it's all, frankly, a lot of hot air, to be more polite about it than I'd like to be.
So, Marcia, I think that it's not just about getting more people to say vote. it's also about having our voice heard better. So,
well, that's the same thing. If getting more people to participate to me, means getting more community engagement and having a greater say by a community in how that community is governed, for better or for worse. I mean,
but for instance, in California, it's Adam Schiff versus Steve Garvey. And suppose every single person votes in that general election, it still doesn't matter. Adam Schiff is going to win. You know, it's basically.
But the reason for that is money. It's not the system of voting. It's money. It was the money that was put behind Steve Garvey to promote his inappropriate, in my estimation, candidacy, as opposed to the candidacies of some other and more experienced political people, particularly members of the House, who could not afford to raise the kind of money that they did to push Steve Garvey.
I know that
does somebody have a different analysis?
Well, there has been, I don't know if it's active now, a Money in Politics group for at least some local leagues, maybe also the state league. I don't know if any of them are active now. We have a Money in Politics position. One of the things is, how do you get those rules changed unless you elect people who will work on that legislation? Neil, maybe you can answer the question better.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the conversation and need to learn more. I would say that we need reform in many, many ways. So the fact that we need campaign finance reform, which I totally agree with, and which I desperately wish we would move forward on something like what Seattle does with vouchers, doesn't mean we shouldn't move forward in a way that is transparently obvious to me that we need to in election methods. And we have many positions at the local, state, and national level on that. So for the moment in this task force, I'd suggest that we focus on what we can do in this realm. But all important conversations. Thank you.
Agreed.
So, yeah. I just read an article last night about the approval voting elections in Fargo and St. Louis. Yeah. Which included the amount of money spent by each candidate. And in at least one candidate spent way more than the others and yet lost. So
can you put that in the chat? A link to that article in the chat, maybe?
Sure. I'm looking for it right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Let's move on. This is our state league position, and this is much more about voting methods than the other one, which was and maybe more vague. It doesn't talk about minority voices. It does talk about proportional representation, but let's talk a little bit about the voting methods in this Initiative 310. So the choose one method in the primary would not elect, it would advance 4 candidates. But an election like that means that you usually get a semi-proportional mix of 4 candidates, which is great if you want diversity. And but in the end, you're not going to get diversity from this one election because you choose a single winner. But maybe you want diversity of choices So, for instance, in Alaska, the Democrat would never have made it to the final because they wouldn't, the Republicans would have swept it. It would have been block. If you could vote for 4, all the Republicans would have moved on to the final probably, because people tend to vote using that party label, which is what Seth Maskett is talking about. That's useful information for voters. There's a lot of work voting, especially when you have a really long ballot. And so people depend on that letter by somebody's name. And okay, so another comment about our voting methods position is that we prefer proportional voting methods, and 310 only applies to single winner elections, so it's not arguably ideal. We would like to go beyond 310 and go straight to proportional voting. And there's an, okay, we're running out of time, so I think we're already over. So, and then one other complaint, if you will, is that as far as we know, there was only one voting method considered, instant runoff voting. There is a huge national lobby behind this. And if I think that of all the election initiatives that were proposed, a couple of them didn't have any voting method changes. They were things like timely reporting of elections or getting rid of caucuses and assemblies. And unfortunately, they didn't end up doing that because the league likes more options for getting on the ballot, not fewer. But they didn't consider any other voting methods as far as we know, and money reigns here, and the RCV, or instant runoff voting, is the most popular one. Another issue is that there would be 2 primary election systems under this right now. There's the presidential and everything else, and we can deal with that. But now there would be the presidential, most of the state offices, except for district attorney, and then all the county offices and district attorney would be under the current system. The other state offices would be using this final 4, and then the presidential is still different. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to use it for all partisan offices if it's so good. And maybe we should actually start with the county offices, because those can be implemented by a county clerk instead of going statewide, which has problems once you start going across county lines. So they didn't ask our opinion on this beforehand, but they had the Alaska model, so that's what they modeled it after. Anybody have questions on this? We're getting close to the end, I think. Okay, the last thing is the primary election reform study update, but maybe people want to talk about some more on the Alaska Final Four model. Or Tony, do we need to come up with a recommendation at this meeting? What's the next step for the Alaska Final Four?
For Tony, or while Tony's looking for her mute, it would seem useful to me to have some more discussion. I know that CL kind of started it off, but certainly love to hear what people have to say.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we can all see each other.
Is CL not here anymore?
I agree with Neil. I think, I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around all of this before we make any decisions, but I think we need some more discussions and more time to think about it.
So, okay. So I found my microphone and my camera. Something jumped on top of my screen and I couldn't see anything but that other thing. Yeah, I shouldn't say this. I'm not satisfied at the moment that we've had enough discussion. And I don't see for this particular issue a reason why we can't wait at least another meeting to have a more thorough discussion.
Maybe with Seth Maskett here next month, that would be, like an outside person who's considered an expert who we could also talk to.
And ask a lot of questions. I think what people need to remember is that we are guided by our positions, whether they're on elections or, access to voting or whatever it is, and the principles of the League of Women Voters. So we all need to sort of put against our principles and positions the contents of the proposal. So I think that would be a homework assignment, to think about the proposal and then think about where we stand on what 310 represents to us.
Anybody who has questions that, send them now, ask them now, or we can ask them over this next month or something. But those are, and also remember, this is statutory, so that it can be changed. Like the fact that they don't include DAs, I find ridiculous, actually. And but that's something that could be added later if it does pass. So,
and to just counter Celeste, that's a real bugaboo for Celeste, is the DAs. And that's not, it's there is a reason why they didn't put the DAs in there.
What is DAs?
District attorney.
District attorneys, you vote for them statewide, but they really work within a certain district. So they're not state officers like the treasurer of Colorado.
I'm sorry, you don't vote for them statewide, you vote for them district-wide.
I'm in judicial district 20.
Attorney General.
If you do it district-wide, then my argument is the same, that they're not the whole state of Colorado.
It's like State Board of Education or CU Regent. You can elect some of them by some or all of them, depending on whether we have an even number or an odd number of congressional districts. You can elect them just from a district. And all district attorneys are elected just from their district, which map onto counties, I believe, one or more counties. No, is that not true?
I don't know. We have a Weld County.
Most of them are by county or multi-county districts.
Yeah.
But for example, Arapahoe County used to be part of a 4-county district attorney district, and it is now a separate district. But it is just Arapahoe County.
Judicial districts don't split counties.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And it was a statewide ballot measure recently.
Last time.
Changed that, yeah. Okay, so what I'm hearing is maybe invite Seth Maskett to come to our next meeting, which I think I said was June 17th. I'm not sure. Is that a Monday? And then continue this discussion next month. Bring your questions, bring your friends. Meanwhile, we'll also work on this proportional representation study group, and the primary election reform study will also continue on, which may have some bearing on what position we take on the Initiative 310. And who knows, maybe Initiative 310 won't make it through the Supreme Court. So
I guess my only thought is that I wouldn't want to take a particular political scientist and say they're the expert. We should invite them, ask them questions, listen to them. I mean, they don't even know what the league position is, I dare say. So, I wouldn't single that out. I'm happy to have further discussion next time. I'm kind of curious what a straw poll would look like at this point, or if that's appropriate, or if people don't feel ready to do that, we can delay. I see a lot of benefits here, even though there are things that I don't like about it. So I'm just curious where people are standing now.
Deborah, you want to
say? I would be, because I'm hearing a lot of people who are uncertain and who don't know the details, that I would be uncomfortable with a straw poll at this point. I think we all need to go back and look at these things that we have that inform us of what this is and how it might act and so forth and so on.
I think that makes sense. And actually, if we had a table next time that said, here are all the positions we think apply, here's how that position would relate to it, then I think we can do exactly as you said, Tony, and really have the positions drive what we're talking about. Thank you.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. We need that. We need to look juxtapositions between 310 and our positions.
Yeah, so more so than inviting experts in, I think moving to as crisply as we can. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Deborah?
I was just going to comment that I was struck by Tony's comment about thinking about this in terms of the league positions and also participating in this primary study guide. I'm not the voting expert, but I do think that there are people working on that who could look at 310 in view of the league positions and give us, maybe before the next meeting, some information about what it does well and what it doesn't do well, so that a straw poll would be more meaningful.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm going to advocate in favor of the expertise of a political scientist. And in that respect, I would say if you give him a very clear assignment to say, please review the league position and please review the current literature and positions that are out there, it might be an informed summary that could provide more benefit.
Yeah, Marcia, I always think there's not a reason why we can't do both. Have an expert come and talk to us and then also have our own conversation.
We might not want to call them an expert, just to Neil's point. Just call them a political scientist, who studies elections, and then, just that way we're not putting our thumb on the scales necessarily.
We're not labeling him.
Right.
Having them work from the positions would be helpful if we do that.
So we do, I mean, we don't have a primary election reform position yet. We do have a state position on voting methods and a national position on voter representation, and those were included in this slide deck, which is available from our website. I'm going to take out 2 slides that were redone in a better format, so you might want to wait an hour before you pull that slide deck up. But yeah, so we have tried to look at the positions a little bit and make comments, but we haven't asked consensus questions. Maybe that's where we need to go on this. No.
No, we don't have time to do that. The election's in November, and there's no way we can do consensus questions before then.
I meant consensus questions on Initiative 310.
Yeah. Better not use the word consensus.
Good idea. Okay.
True.
Let me go ahead and, Barb, you want to say something?
No, yeah, I was just concurring with Tony. That might take a longer time than we have to dedicate to it.
Okay. I apologize for us going over. There's not much to say necessarily on the primary election reform study compared to the other things we need to talk about, but there have been 2 studies Maryland and Maine have done, and they did not focus very much on voting methods. They mostly focused on getting away from a closed primary, which isn't really an issue for us. But our study could be useful for other state leagues like Idaho, Kentucky, Minnesota. And trying to, right now, our state position doesn't advocate for a particular voting method. So would we would want to talk about whether a different voting method is good to use in the primary and or in the general, but which one we might not want to go into the weeds that much on that. I think Marcus, who's doing a lot of work, wants to talk about the advantages of different voting methods for the primary and or the general. And so that's something that will need to be clarified before we get too far along. And then there are lots of related issues with primaries, including voter turnout, competitiveness, and polarization. And that's all that we have for this. So now's the last chance to speak up to say something about our meeting next month or volunteer to be involved more or anything like that. I appreciate everybody coming here, and I think I'll try to save the chat. I guess I ended up being yeah, okay, I'm saving the chat. I think it also saves in the video, but I'm not sure. So,
hey,
anything
Celeste,
else?
maybe next time you ought to have AI take notes for you.
Oh, we actually did that. I'm curious how we get them.
Beth can download them. Because I did it for a meeting I had on Candidate Forum for CD4, and it scared me. I'm going, oh my God, that's better than any notes. It's scary, but it would be helpful.
Yeah, if you go to the upper left-hand corner, right next to the little checkbox, there's a little AI star box that talks about a meeting summary and a smart recording. But I was hoping I could look at it during the meeting, but maybe it's only at the end.
I don't know. Check with Beth, because she sent that to us, and it was pretty amazing and pretty accurate.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Celeste. Fabulous job.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
And everyone. Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Deborah, I'm going to call you if you're still on or talk to you before. I guess you're off. I thought I saved the chat and now, okay, I'm going to try saving the chat again. I'm going to stop the recording first.
Thanks, Celeste. Good night.
Good night.